I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's guest is a very good and old friend of mine. She was the 1998 Fitness Olympia champ. She was probably one of the most popular people in the entire industry all through the 90s and 2000s. It's my pleasure to get her here. She interviewed me last week. I got her here this week. Of course, the woman I'm talking about is Monica Brant. What's up?
Oh, hey. Hi, Dave.
How you doing, Monica?
I'm awesome. It's been a really nice day here in Texas. The sun is out. It's about 60 degrees. I got on the track today. I got my teeth cleaned, and, I'm here with you. So it's a great day.
If you get your teeth cleaned and you get to go outside, it's who's better than you? That's what I always say. Monica, you had me on last week and actually got to flip the chairs on me, and you actually got to interview me, which a lot of people liked because it took me out of that seat of having to ask all the questions. And so I'm back in my seat now because I want to ask you the questions because you've had quite the career and you're still going strong. And so I want to know all the secrets.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And years ago, Chris Cormier saw me. Well, we saw each other at Gold's Gym in Venice. I was out there. I don't know what I was doing. Probably one of my camps or something. I was out there working. It's after I moved from LA and I was back in town. And Chris was just kind of we were visiting, and he said, it's really good to stay and be relevant. Yeah. And he used that word, and he was complimenting me. And I just thought it's kind of stuck with me forever, figuring out how do I stay relevant? How do I stay approachable and professional and, still give back to people and do all the things. So, I'm trying to just continue to do that, maintaining my marriage and other businesses. So it's good life.
Now, I got to ask you this question because you still look absolutely fabulous, I have to say. I think, did you just turn 50 or you're going to turn 50?
I did. Last October, the big 5.
Okay. So you're 50 and fabulous. And does that require a lot of work at 50 years old as a woman to look as good as you do, or is it good genetics?
You're very, very kind. I definitely have good genetics. My parents, no doubt, my grandparents, great genetics. But, I'm like anyone else. If I don't take care of myself, then my health fails a little bit. Or not I guess you shouldn't say my health, but like anyone, my health could fail. But I do, I put on weight like anybody else. Right. I have more muscle. So, tend to, when you have a little more muscle, you tend to be able to do a little bit more. But I still have to take care of myself and watch things that I eat, not overeat or
right.
I gotta keep exercising. I put my pants on just like anyone else and make myself go out and get on the track or whatever the case is for the exercise of the day. And you have to find ways to continue to motivate yourself. Right now, I don't have a big athletic goal. Just want to stay feeling good. I want to feel good. I want to feel like I have strength and I have flexibility and I have, like my lungs feel strong. I've talked a lot over the last probably decade about continuing to create a strong heart and strong lungs and having to sweat from not just being hot, but like literally from exercise. Right. It's so important, I feel like. And those 3 things have really helped a lot. And I think that they've been good for other people to hear that maybe don't want to be a competitive athlete and they feel like they don't really have anything in common with me and what can I do to help them? I'm like, hey, listen, you get those questions like, what do I do? And they want, within 5 minutes, they want you to tell them
the secrets,
how to, change the big ship of their life. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell you in 5 minutes how to change something, but I'll tell you this: get your heart rate up a couple times a week, and not because you're scared. You know, get out and get your lungs pumping, and interval kind of things, whatever that looks like. If you walk faster than you normally walk, or you go uphill as opposed to flat, or whatever you can do, you know. And then the other thing is you've got to let your body sweat from being athletic, being, you know, moving your body so that it can lose some toxins out of your skin, because our skin is so important to continue to cleanse.
Right. Well, I tell people, you know, it's a simple one-word answer: consistency.
Well,
and that's what you do. You've consistently been living the lifestyle, and you don't stop. So when someone's out of shape and they want to get back in shape, they look at you and they think, well, there must be something I can do in the next 4 weeks to look like her. No, you've been doing this for 30 years, and so you've never stopped. So what I tell people is apply what we're telling you, apply the diet and the supplements and the training, but apply it apply it consistently, because if you stop because you're like, oh, I'm not seeing the results I want, right before you stopped, you were just about to make a huge leap forward and you didn't even know it, you know?
Right. And it's just finding, you know, for people, unless they have a big athletic goal, it's like finding what they enjoy to do, because everybody enjoys something, right? Like you gotta enjoy. There's something that you can enjoy doing that your body has to get up and move around. And even if it's just getting up and down, up and down, up and down until you can get up and walk, you know, It's like, I do, I've been, since last March when the lockdown happened, I started a body weight session twice a week and on Zoom. And it's literally all body weight. I focus on joint mobility, stretching, posture correction exercises, and glute activation. So I've been doing these twice a week with people, and it's been really good for me. And a lot of times, some of these women, it's just like getting up off the floor, getting the whole body up and down and up and down, and you know, is good enough workout sometimes for somebody. So we're just trying to figure out, you know, how do we get people moving? How do we continue to move ourselves and feel like we want to feel in our skin?
Well, you know, you've had an amazing career, obviously. I mean, you've been on probably more covers than any other woman that I know of in the history of our sport. You've, you know, accomplished pretty much everything you need to accomplish on a stage. You won the Olympia in 1998 as a fitness competitor, because really there was no figure back then, which people don't realize what you accomplished was incredible, because you didn't have a gymnastics background like a lot of these girls who were you competing at that time. The level of the fitness routine was so high. I mean, it was so much better than what we see today, because there was a lot more gymnasts involved with it, that the fact that you were able to win, now obviously you always had the best physique up there, but you know, that you were able to beat some of these gymnastic girls at their own game, so to speak, was a really incredible feat. And I know it was because you were just so focused on doing everything right. You had a coach for everything pretty much, right?
I've always had coaches, absolutely. And especially when I started getting into when I moved to California, I connected with a dance instructor because I didn't have a dance background.
Right.
I taught myself some gymnastics from my teenage years off the trampoline, and then I thought I wanted to try out for cheerleading. And of course, I lived out in the middle of nowhere growing up, and my mom, you know, we had horses, and I showed horses, and my mom always said, look, you can do horse shows this summer, or you can do something else. And one summer I thought I wanted to do cheerleading, so I taught myself how to do standing back tucks and back handsprings and front handsprings and all these things, front flips off the trampoline on the ground. And then I never tried out cheerleading. So I had access to these tricks, but I had never learned how to do a cartwheel correctly. So
Isn't that weird? Isn't it weird how the skills we learn as a kid somehow always come into play later in life, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it was a lot of fun. I think for me, I've always just, let me start this off first. I did a test a few years ago, one of these Gallup Strength Finder tests. And when I found my strengths through this test, which, you know, it's a test that's been out for many, many, many years. And I was so impressed because everyone that was around me at the time when I took this test, I was involved with a little company, and everyone was taking the test, and everyone could have sworn I was that competitor's going to be my number one, you know, out of the top, because they do a top 5, and then you can do the whole 30 of your top 30 strengths.
Okay.
And my top competitor, first of all, as a strength, was not in my top 12.
Wow.
It was further down, closer to 20. You know what my number one was? Which,
What?
when I read it and read the understanding of it, what they gave as a definition, it literally brought tears to my eyes, because I was like, somebody finally gets me. It was learner. I'm a learner. And it's just so true. Like, I am a learner, and I like to learn how to do things. I like to learn things, and I'm always kind of figuring out what can I learn next. And so when I look back at all the competitions, I feel like a lot of it was learning about, how to be on stage. Because I grew up riding horses and running track and water skiing. You don't have to point your toes and smile and make someone feel like excited about what you're doing. You're doing a sport, but it's a completely, different type of sport. So you didn't have to, like a cheerleader would have to, get the crowd riled up and all that with the expressions. Like, you don't do that when you're running track. So I had to learn a lot. I had to learn how to dance. I had to learn how to spot my turns, point my toes. I had to learn how to count the dance steps. I had to learn, and then I had to go back in and relearn how to do my gymnastics correctly, because the way I was doing it was all muscle, but I couldn't implement those very well into a routine, and especially and then having longevity. So I had to learn. I started working with the gymnastics coach, and then, and then it was like learning the business. And I remember I used to ask a lot of the bodybuilders back in the late 90s, because I was there at Gold's Gym, and I would go in and I'd say, look, I've got somebody asking me to do an appearance. How do I handle this part of the business? And there were so many times that I would be able to ask the men, because they were always willing to talk to me and give me pointers and, suggestions, like, oh, make sure you get 50% deposit before you let them book your flight, these kind of things.
No, and it's important. You're right, 100%.
Yeah, so I look back at my career has always been about learning, but then the other part of me is I'm a relationship person, and I love to share, I love to network, I love to bring people into good things and introduce each, this person to this person, and that's a real joy for me. So it's kind of how I've built my career, and I haven't ever been like this big business money hungry person, so maybe I should have been like that a little bit more, but
yeah, but you know what, I've never seen more people want to buy stuff from you than, people think, like, nowadays, from all the social media darlings that everyone, is all obsessed over. Before social media, before the internet, you would sit at an expo and you'd have lines literally out the door from the minute the expo opened up to the minute it closed, and you would still be there afterwards, when they were cleaning up, selling pictures and taking pictures with people and talking to them. I mean, what do you think, why were people so drawn to you as a competitor, as a person who was, a leader, so to speak, in the women's aspect of our sport?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with, I don't ever look at myself like I have an unattainable physique, and I didn't have an unattainable, for somebody, routine. I didn't have, so I feel like a lot of people felt, and I still hear this today, like, oh my gosh, everyone used to compare me to you, and it's such an honor. And so I think people could see me and my, my physique, and yes, I had muscle and the symmetry was nice, but I wasn't like ridiculously muscular. I wasn't super, super skinny. Like, I was, kind of, and I think so. The attainable part, maybe people kind of, looked at me, and I was a country girl, so people could relate to riding horses, and that, they used to do all the stories on you in the magazines. And so I had a lot of great stories that come out about my past and who I was and how I grew up a country girl. And, and then my faith would, seep through, and people would then meet me, and I think people would really see that I genuinely like people. I genuinely care about others. And so I had a lot of people that would come back every year, because I did the Olympia. I was there working 20 years, and the Arnold 20 years, working for 20 years each. And then obviously on stage for maybe 9 or 10 of them. And so I think it was just, like you said earlier, the consistency, I just was there. I was there. And if people would come back, I had a good memory to be able to remember people's names.
I think it also, this is what my whole take on it is, there was just women's bodybuilding initially. And obviously, that would have been a category that you probably would have been too small for. I'm sure you
Right.
probably did a few shows at bodybuilding at first.
No,
and then,
never.
No, never,
Dave,
really.
I never did. I never. Fitness only. And so that's why I always say I was one of
Wow.
the first real fitness
Yeah,
girls.
because a lot of the fitness girls started in bodybuilding because there was nothing, and then they did fitness.
No.
And, and then there was obviously figure, which was your category, obviously, because, this was something you didn't have to worry about a routine, and it wasn't. But the bottom line is that I think you bridged the gap between the beautiful cover girl face with the athletic physique body that people wanted. And I think you were the first person to really do that. And, when you were on a cover, I'm sure those covers sold amazing. And so people wanted to look like you, because you had the balance of beauty and physique. And I think you were the first person really to showcase that at a high level and actually be successful and place very well, which included obviously an Olympia victory.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you on that for sure. And, I remember right away, as I moved to LA in 95, was training to do Jan Tana's pro fitness show. It wasn't an IFBB show at the time. She did have the Masters Olympia going on at that year, but this was the first time she had held the pro fitness show. So it wasn't affiliated because IFBB didn't exist and NPC for fitness didn't exist.
Right.
So she had just invited a bunch of different fitness girls that were kind of up and coming from all the different organizations. I was training for that. I moved to LA and started working, and actually she hired me for a job. So I'm sure people, that was really cool because I got to she hired me to come out and do a photo shoot with her in Jamaica. And from those pictures, she ended up putting me on, as a Jan Tana girl.
Yeah, you were I remember you and her had some kind of business relationship, right? Because
it was that. Yeah, she used me. And so the funny thing is she always says she found me, which I give her a little credit for that. But I actually found her, Dave, and I'll tell you, I've always been somebody that has no problem going up and asking people or sharing something or talking to somebody. I've never been shy like that.
Right.
And when I did the Fitness USA Nationals in February of 95, I still lived in Texas. It was the first time I've done a big national level show. There was 170 girls or something like this. And, this was where you had to wear the gown and you had to speak on stage and tell your philosophy.
It was like a beauty pageant. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we had a routine and we had
swimsuit.
Yes, the physique. Yeah. Okay. You're right. So the 3 rounds. And of course they did a big production and everything. It was in Buena Park. And I went out there, my family came out to watch, and we traveled out there, and I had a girlfriend of mine who was a hairdresser. She came with me backstage, and as we were all 100 and whatever girls going backstage to get dressing rooms, I just watched all this herd of girls and all, their friend or whoever was with them going in all the different rooms. Well, there was one door that was open. It was a big door.
Right.
And I looked inside and I just saw one girl in there. Well, two people. And I'm like, well, this is kind of weird because no one else is coming in this room. So I'm like, I told my girlfriend, her name's Susie, I was like, let's go in here because look how big, there's like tons of space. No one's in here but 2 people. So we go in there and lo and behold, it's Carol Simple and Jan Tana.
Oh, wow.
Jan was her sponsor and Carol was, I didn't know this at the time because I was just new.
Right.
But Carol was the one that was supposed to be winning the show, right? Everyone's like, oh, Carol's going to win, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I didn't even know that when I got in there. I just, over the course of being in there and then coming in and out, I kept hearing all these people talking. Yeah, you hear stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I'm in the room with Jan Tana. And I was like, who is Jan Tana? I didn't even know who she was. And over the course of being backstage in that environment with Jan and Carol, I visited briefly. I stayed in my own little spot, and I had a Z card. So mind you, the year before, 94, is when I shot with Ralph DeHaan, and I ended up on the cover with Dennis Newman of Muscle and Fitness.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was a big
I was just like, I was still living in Texas, waitress. I was a waitress, and
I didn't know that.
Personal training.
Yeah.
And, I've done a couple fitness shows, nothing big, but I had an opportunity in 93 going back again to go to I was seeing a guy who was bodybuilding at the time, and he was doing the It was in Tijuana in '93. It was the Nationals or the USA. I can't remember.
Or maybe North American. North American.
Yeah, that sounds right, because it was in around December of '93.
Yep.
I showed up with my friend Susie, and the guy that I was kind of dating was in the heavyweight division, and we just showed up. I didn't know anyone, and he introduced me to John Perillo.
Oh, wow.
John Perillo introduced me to Ralph DeHaan and Steve Winterstrom.
Oh boy, there you go.
I know, and so Ralph was like, and I didn't know muscle and fitness. I knew nothing. Like I was 22.
Yeah, Ralph was was one of the top photographers there at the time. Yeah.
Right, and I didn't know any of this. I just met. These are who I met. Yeah? And so Ralph told me, hey, if you ever come back to California, look me up and let's do a photo shoot. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. And I've been doing photo shoots since I was 14.
Monica, did he have that basement, that trapdoor like studios back then?
Well, you mean at his house?
Yeah. Did you ever go to his house, to that studio?
Well, yeah, because I'll just I just kind of backtrack from the Jantana story, but I'll tell you what. It's because I think it's a really fun story. So Ralph had told me that was, we just moved back again. We moved back in time to 93. I meet John Perillo at the very end of 93. 94, around March, we're going on spring break. My girlfriends and me, about 5 girls, if you can imagine, that's aging 21, 22, 23.
Right.
We're all going to LA for a long weekend to go out and hang out. We all have one hotel room, one rental car, and we go shopping for days and go out to every nightclub we could go out to in LA.
Right.
Okay, so mind you, it was like 4 days. You can get it, right? And so after all of this shopping spree and going out and everything, I had a plan with Ralph DeHaan, and my girlfriend Susie was with me, and we drove down to San Diego, me and my girlfriend. We go, and Ralph lets us stay down in his basement, and he had a studio separate. So I go, after all this party kind of feel, right? Like nowadays, I'm like, there was no way I would have always done the photo shoot first, and then to go
Of course, yeah.
Well, we do photos. It's just me and my girlfriend and Ralph, and it's just doing all these test shots. And then after the photo shoot, he was like, oh, if you're ever back in LA again, look me up and we'll do another shoot. And I'm like, okay. So long story short, June of 94, I compete in LA in Venice Beach, Venice High School, actually. They hold a Fitness USA competition. I think if I'm going to do this sport, I got to go to LA and compete with the big names.
Yeah.
Right. I get to LA June of 94. I win my show. And I'd already set up another photo shoot with Ralph, and I still didn't really understand what he did. I didn't know muscle and fitness. I still was just clueless. I'm 23.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend and I drive back to San Diego, and I'm all excited because I won my show and all this. And, well, I do this photo shoot with Ralph, and he says, hey, can you stay another day? Because tomorrow I'm shooting with Dennis Newman. And maybe I can do some shots with you. And I was like, who's Dennis Newman?
Yeah, right. He had just won the USA Championships, yeah.
Dennis had just won the USA's, or whatever it was in June, because it was in June of 94. He just won that. I didn't know I had no idea he was, contracted athlete with Weider. I knew nothing. I just was like, who's Dennis? And my girlfriend was like, well, we can stay. Back then you could change your flights.
Of course.
So we stay another day. The next day we show up at the studio. My girlfriend and I drive over there. Dennis and Ralph are already there shooting. And Ralph had let us stay in his basement again, which, I look back and I thought, man, I really trusted Ralph. Like, my girlfriend was with me.
Explain the how you get to the studio basement there. First of all, you go into his basement, and then below the basement there's a trap door. Right?
We didn't do that.
Oh, you didn't do that? Maybe this was a different house.
Studio that was not at his house.
Oh, because when that in the later '90s, he had a house with his own photo shoot in there. You'd actually go into his basement, and then below the basement, because he lived on the side of a mountain or something like that, there was a trap door. It was so I was like 300 pounds at the time. It was so claustrophobic, I couldn't even go down there. You had to climb down this little ladder, and you're in this basically tomb that you're shooting in, and he's got a whole photo studio set up in there, and that's where he shot the girls.
That wasn't what we had.
Oh, thank God. I could never have stayed in there in a million years, because if there was an earthquake, you would have been buried alive. There's no way you survived.
Yeah, no, maybe that was after, I shot with him again for Oxygen magazine or something,
Yeah.
but when he wasn't a Weeder contracted
Right.
photographer later, I shot with him. But we were in the gym setting or whatever. We weren't at a studio.
Right.
So, but that was that photo shoot with Dennis. I had no clue that it was even going to be considered for a cover. And I'm sure Ralph probably never told me that either.
No, he probably just sent them in, and Joe probably liked the pictures, and so he picked them. Yeah.
Right, he submitted it, and then so a few months go down. I'm back I'm in San Antonio doing my thing, and I get a phone call from Ralph. And you remember the old days, you had the recorder, and you go home, push the button on the blinking
the
light.
voice machine. Yeah, answer machine.
Yeah, and I had probably come home from waitressing because I had a really, really awesome night job waitressing at a little fun place. It was kind of like a Cheers, but a little upscale of Cheers.
Right.
We had great regulars. Some days I'm like, I wish I could go back to those days. I made great money. I could make $300 or $400 sometimes a night.
I'm sure you probably did. The way you looked, I'm sure the guys were throwing money at you. Yeah.
Well, it was also my serving ability.
I'm sure it was, Monica. Yeah.
So I remember coming home and I have the message, "Congratulations, cover girl." It's Ralph, right? And I'm like,
wow.
What? He says, "You're going to be on the Muscle and Fitness cover in November," and it might have been like September when he's telling me this, or I don't remember, somewhere in there. And I was like, what? I didn't, still kind of didn't really know what that meant.
Right.
So when the cover came out in November, or for November, it came out October, whatever. I remember going to the grocery store and buying like 10 copies.
Of course.
I didn't, I got a check for $200 from Weeder. And I wish I had thought enough to save that check. You go deposit the money.
Of course, yeah.
And I was like, man, I wish I still had. That would have been so fun to be able to say, look at my first check from a cover. And so moving back forward, I was working with an agent here in San Antonio, and we had put like one of those composites together, had my Muscle and Fitness cover on it.
Oh, nice.
Which is right here behind me, right here. Can you see that?
No, it's out of the sight. But yeah, I know the cover you're talking about. It's amazing.
So I have the cover on this
Maybe
good
Tyler
card,
can
and
pull it
I
up.
got the
Dennis Newman, Monica Brant cover, Muscle and Fitness.
Yeah, and so when I'm at that show and Jantana's there working with Carol, I had one of my composites with me, which had, my headshot and all this. And so at some point through that show, I go up to Jan and I said, I don't want to interrupt. I'm not trying to, but if you ever need a blonde model, and I hand her, because Carol had dark hair.
Right.
So I hand her my card and had the Muscle and Fitness cover and, my guest girl look, because I had a photographer do some photos and he wanted to do the guest girl look for me. And
gotcha.
So I had great pictures. And so she called me, a couple weeks late go by, and she had, my number. I'd given her my number on the card too. And so she called me and, hey, Jan, want to invite you to my fitness show? Anyways, it was.
That's a good impression.
It was awesome. And I trained my butt off. We had to do a minute of push-ups. This was the other thing. In Jantana, she had the physique round, the routine round, and a fitness round. She was the first competition to have this fitness round. I don't know if you remember that. And
I wanted to preface that. People don't realize in the fitness category, even when it went to the IFBB and NPC, there was a fitness round where you had to do some kind of like push-ups, or they had all kinds of crazy different things. And actually, you used to kick butt on that, right? That was your best round.
Well, Jan showed there was a minute of push-ups, and you had to go down. Like, you couldn't just fake it. They had someone watching you, right? And then they had a minute of sit-ups and a minute on the Versa climber.
That's right.
And they had about a 30-second in between each. So you got out there and you started on one and you just went all the way around. Yeah, so I remember training for months for that. I remember doing push-ups every night, like timing and getting. I did 63 official push-ups in a minute.
Wow, that's better than probably any guy could do. That's for sure.
I mean, I can't do that now, but yeah, I worked my butt off for this, and then.
But you always were good at that round. I remember when they had that round. You always used to win or be at the top of that round, right?
Yeah, so that was
well,
good.
Because you were an athlete, though. You were an athlete. I think that's where the athletics really, aided you, so to speak. What was that? And that was a 30 you scored too, right?
That was a third, right? Because then the other rounds were physique, and they gave you your bikini. You had to wear. Everyone had the same bikini to wear for that show.
Right.
Jan gave everyone the same bikini, and then which I think is kind of nice in a way, but I'm gonna leave it at that. And then it was the routine round, and I'd moved to California. I started working with the choreographer and the gymnastics coach out there, and started getting massages, which changed my life. Deep tissue massage. I'd never had that before, and I started out there because my legs got to where I couldn't really do my splits and everything because I was overtrained. Anyways, I ended up winning that show because of all 3 rounds were high enough, and I was on point for that show. It was really fun.
Right.
I got invited to the first Fitness Olympia, and right in between the Jantana and the Olympia, I went and filmed for Kiana Tom for Flex Appeal, ESPN2.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And remember I competed in February at the Buena Park, the Nationals. I came 9th in that show. That's the one Carol won when I met Jan. And then I moved to California, and then I was traveling, and then I got ready for the Jantana. I won that, did Kiana's thing. And by the time the Olympia came, I was spent. Mm-hmm. It was, so my first showing at the Olympia, I think I came in 9th maybe. It wasn't on my game. I really didn't have a good grasp on how to bring my physique in after all of that. I was so worn out from everything, and that was I just moved to California within 7 months, so it was a lot, but it was a really great year, and that was how we turned pro. Then so all the girls on the Fitness Olympia stage in '95 were the very original fitness pro IFBB women. That wanted to continue competing.
Right. They were basically invited people to be pros initially because they had no pros.
Right. They had never. Yeah. So we had some bodybuilding. Sharon Burnett was one of the ones that came down, and I don't remember all the names, but there was a lot of really great physiques, and then some that were just great gymnasts, and so it was just a combination of Mia Finnegan actually won that Olympia. She was good, very good.
Between Mia Finnegan, Carol Semple, Susie Curry, these were girls whose routines were like, Kelly Ryan eventually, these routines were like off the charts, these girls. The fact that you had to compete against these girls routine-wise was a huge disadvantage for you. Because, even though you beat most of them on physique, I felt, and then even in the athletic round, you did always very well. It had to be frustrating for you to go against these, like, some of them were like, elite level gymnasts,
Oh, for sure. Well, yes, for sure. But what was I supposed to do? I can't just cry about it.
Well, there was no other option. There was no people don't realize there was no figure division to feed. You would have probably gone to that right away, I would imagine, if it was available.
I really did. Well, I'll tell you, if I had given up in '96 or '97 at the Olympia, thinking, well, I can't compete with these girls. In '98, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to win when I won. Right. And I look back and '98, because remember they used to do the Olympia in a different location all the time.
You were overseas.
Well, '98, the fitness was in France. It was in Nice. It was supposed to be in another country, and then at the last minute, they pulled it from that country and they put us in Nice. And I look back at my pictures and my video. We were on a man-made little bitty stage that was built that day, probably. There was no Olympia signage. You look at the video and you're like, "That's the Olympia."
Yeah, it looked like a high school, stage or something.
Not even that nice. It looked like it was probably meant for first graders' little dance recital just to save money, but give something. And the stage day was so bad. I was like, when you're doing gymnastics on a stage like that,
it's dangerous.
You're just pounding yourself. It was not fun. But thankfully, I ended up winning, and I think I look back, that was probably the best routine I had done. My physique was really on. I remember traveling to Europe with 2 cases of this water that was meant for diuretics back then. They have it. It's the Emergence. It's not the C. It's the one that's meant for dieters. It's like I don't know. They used to say for diuretic. For people using diuretics, it doesn't say that anymore. And now you can just find packages of them. You can't find the actual
like Pedialyte almost, Yeah,
because I was afraid, because I'd been to Europe for work and it was so hard to find water. So I I sent 2 cases of water.
Wow.
On the plane.
Nowadays, you couldn't do that. They don't let you bring liquids. You would have been
Right?
out of luck.
Why are you bringing water? Like,
You know,
it was so hard to find water.
People there were people who were not. It was probably the competitors. Probably wasn't the fans. The fans loved that you won. The competitors were not happy that you won that show. Was that tough for you to pill to swallow? That like maybe people were not so happy that you won.
Well, Dave, if that was the sentiment, honestly, I never heard it. So.
Okay.
I never felt that from people. I know that the girls were a little unhappy because that year I had sponsors that flew my makeup artist out with me, and she was backstage with me.
Right.
And I don't know if people realize this, but I was the original one to help open up the backstage for makeup artists, because I remember it wasn't 98. Because I had my makeup artist, she and I started working together in 94, actually. And then I used to bring her on everything. And I would always ask for her to be on set for any photo shoot I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got heavily involved in the fitness industry, working with magazines and all that. But I remember contacting Wayne DeMillia, and he was like, well, I have my makeup artist. I have sponsor for her, flying her out and everything. Right. And this was before 98. This was one of the other Olympias. Or it was actually the Arnold 97.
Oh, wow.
That's what it was. It was the Arnold 97. It's the first year that Arnold was IFBB Fitness, the Fitness International. Right. Because before that, it was Wally Boyko's thing.
Yeah, it was USA, Fitness USA or something like that.
Yeah, so that was the first year, and I called and asked, and they were like, well, it might not have been DeMillia, then it might have been the Lorimer staff.
Sure.
And they were like, well, she needs to be able to help other people. And I'm like, well, she'll help. And I'm thinking, I'm paying, we're bringing her out there. But
yeah, you got to pay for her to help everyone else.
Yeah, so if people were unhappy with me winning the Olympia, I don't know what to say. Like
I think there was a lot of jealousy around you because they thought, maybe I don't know what they thought, but the fans were really happy. I know that because you had an image that people wanted to see in that Olympia position, and I think when you finally got it, it was like, all right, Monica finally got her due. They finally gave her what she deserves.